Over the last couple of months, we've been hearing a lot about Employee Slate and the new AI experience framework. And if you were at Knowledge 26, this was one of the main topics of the week. And honestly, this feels like one of the biggest architectural shifts that we've seen in the employee experience space since Service Portal first launched in 2016. I'm Nathan Firth, and I run a company called Awesome that specializes in user experience. If you find this video useful, don't forget to like and subscribe. And with that, let's dive in. Now, there have been a lot of things thrown around lately, so let's start by breaking down some of the terms. First, we have the AI Experience Framework, also known as AIUX. This is ServiceNow's new AI-first user experience framework. It's built on top of web components based on the open source Lit framework. Next, we have Employee Slate, which is the conversation-first employee experience built on top of the AI experience framework. It can be configured to use either MoveWorks or Now Assist. Then we have EmployeeWorks, which, as far as I understand, is the packaged solution and SKU which includes both Employee Slate and MoveWorks. And then finally, we have Otto, which is ServiceNow's unified conversational engine powering AI experiences, enterprise search, and AI-driven actions across experiences like Employee Slate. Alright, so now let's dive in and take a look at the table structure behind the AI experience framework. At first glance, it appears to be pretty similar to Service Portal. Instead of portals, we have experiences, but there's actually over 30 tables for AIUX, but these are the primary ones we find in the navigator. Now, if we dive into the experience table and look at the Employee Slate record, you'll see we have a URL, a theme field, and a landing path. But a couple of interesting to note are the app shell reference field and the AI experience properties related list. The properties list looks like this is where you can set things like which menu to load or which configuration for AI to use. But I will say this is actually pretty cool because instead of hard-coded fields, we'll be able to create our own components that can be configured using properties from this table. So now let's take a look at the app shell. So first, we have a big CSS field for styling the experience. From what I can tell, this is just regular CSS and doesn't look like it supports variables the way Service Portal did. But then below, we have 4 reference field with a header for the top bar, a footer for the bottom, and a side start for the left rail and a side end for the right rail. But this is pretty cool because experiences can now have widgets on all 4 sides of the screen and not just limited to a header and footer. So now if I go back, let's compare this to the theme record. In the theme, we can now set primary and accent colors, upload our logos and favicons, which support both light and dark mode. And then there's a config tab with some basic options, and a mobile color mapping tab, which I'm assuming allows it to share some properties with Now Mobile. There is also a many-to-many related list for associating a theme with other themes, but I'm not quite sure how that's going to work. Alright, now let's go back and look at a page record. So, page records look pretty simple with only a title, a path, and a related list for containers. So let's dive into the first container. Here we can see that each container has a set of CSS classes and a related list for widget instances and child containers. So this is pretty different from Service Portal, where you were limited to Bootstrap-based layouts. Here you can have whatever layout you would like, since you can use any Flexbox classes and nest as many containers as you like. My guess is that for creating these layouts, in the future ServiceNow will either release a designer app, or perhaps you'll prompt AI to create layouts for you instead of manually creating records. When we click into a child container, Here we can see this container has some widget instances, which, as expected, is a reference to the widget, as well as properties in JSON format, pretty similar to what we had in Service Portal. So now let's look at the widget. We have a server script containing a function with properties for data, options, and input, which should be pretty familiar to most of you. However, instead of HTML, CSS, and client-side JavaScript, we now have a component field, which contains all three. And one other thing to note, since these are web components using the shadow DOM, each component is isolated from the rest of the page and will not inherit things like structural CSS from the main style sheet. But I will have to do a separate video in the future on creating custom components. Alright, so now let's take a look at what the Employee Slate experience actually looks like. The URL format for accessing an experience is AIUX, then the experience path, followed by the page path. So here we have the home screen. First thing to remember is this is AI first, so we don't have a lot of the typical pages or navigation that we had in Employee Center. Instead, everything is designed to be through the conversational interface, powered by Otto. My instance doesn't have Otto configured, so what I'm showing is actually from a demo ServiceNow gave. But here we can see it respond to a question about tuition reimbursement. But one of my favorite parts is the split screen, where you can continue the conversation on the left while seeing the catalog items, knowledge articles, or even generative AI reports on the right. Another cool feature to note is the canvas, where employees can configure their own dashboard and add or rearrange whatever widgets they want to the screen. And another cool feature I found while poking around, there is a widget browser where you can see a list of all of the widgets, and when you click in on one, you get a nice preview of the widget and a new widget editor interface for creating and editing widgets. And as a quick example, I created a sample widget called Featured Portal of the Month. I also noticed that certain widgets display a prompt on the left, so I think we can safely assume that creating and editing widgets will be done via prompt. Ever since Knowledge, I've had a lot of people reach out to me and ask what I think about the new AI experience framework and Employee Slate, and if this is going to be the end of Service Portal or Employee Center. So here's my honest take. The AI experience framework is actually pretty well architected. The team at ServiceNow has put a lot of time and attention into building this next generation framework, and there's just a ton of cool features that I've discovered that I won't have time to cover in this video. And on the Employee Slate side, replacing search with the conversational interface with the split screen, it's just awesome. So there are a ton of positive things to say about it. But there are a few things to consider before we get too excited and make the switch. First, as of the time of this recording, most of the tables in the AI Experience framework are locked and the new button has been disabled. So you will be limited in what you can do today. You can't configure the Slate experience, adding your own logo and choosing a primary color, but today you can't create your own custom portal or add custom pages the way we did with Employee Center. There is also no topic taxonomy, landing pages, content campaigns, or manager hub. So if you have a multi-department portal or intranet with lots of features or custom branding, you may want to wait a few releases until Employee Slate has more feature parity. Secondly, I love the conversational interface because it works incredibly well for many use cases, like enterprise search. But on the flip side, I also want to have the option to browse the portal with traditional navigation, topics, departments, and landing pages. I just don't think the whole portal can be condensed into a conversation. But Employee Slate is only about a month old, so perhaps some of these features will be added in an upcoming release. And then finally is the pricing, which I know is extremely likely to change, but the base version of Employee Center is free, and the current pricing that I've seen on Employee Slate is a fixed fee per employee per month, plus token usage fees. So that's not too big of a surprise given that ServiceNow has pivoted into an AI company, but the additional costs is something that should be taken into account when you're making the decision on which platform to use. From my conversations with friends at ServiceNow, there is currently no plans to deprecate Service Portal or Employee Center. They will both remain fully supported moving forward, and what I've been told is that for customers without a license to Now Assist or MoveWorks, or if they're just using many of the features that are not yet available in Slate, the recommendation will be to continue using Employee Center, especially for content-rich and intranet-like employee experiences. But that's all I have for you guys today. So until next time, I'm Nathan Firth, and thank you so much for watching.